Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Cannabis Common Sense. We have a great show for you this week. It is our 732nd show here on Good Friday. According to some people, it's April 18th. This year, the Easter holiday falls on 4/20, so I hope you have a happy holiday season. We have as a guest, speaking of religious beliefs, Mr. Ray here, who was practitioner of cannabis as a sacrament. We'll be talking about that and his previous incarnation as a Maui TV host. Right next door is our joint host, Mr. Casper Leach. Welcome, Casper. We have a hemp news segment for you tonight, and standing by in the wings is John Cornett. How are you this week, John?
Excellent, Paul. Thank you very much.
Great. We'll be back with our hemp news. We'll be taking your phone calls if you have questions about ending adult marijuana prohibition, restoring industrial hemp, or helping medical marijuana patients. You can call us at 503-288-4882. And but first we'll bring on our infamous dancing cannabis leaves.
I feel the force.
Okay. U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder said he is, quote, cautiously optimistic, end quote, about marijuana legalization in Washington State and Colorado, but added it's tough to predict where legalization will be in 10 years. In the same interview, Holder, the nation's top law enforcement official, admitted he had tried cannabis in college. Holder told Ryan J. Riley of the Huffington Post, quote, I think there might have been a burst of feeling that what happened in Washington, Colorado was going to be soon replicated across the country. I'm not sure that is necessarily the case. I think a lot of states are going to be looking to see what happens in Washington, what happens in Colorado, before those decisions are made in substantial parts of the country, end quote, Attorney General Holder said. The Department of Justice has allowed marijuana legalization to go forward in the two states where voters chose that course back in November 2012, and has issued guidance to federal prosecutors that it intended to open up banking services for cannabis businesses that are legal under state law. Holder said, quote, I think what people have to understand is that when we have those 8 priorities that we've set out, it essentially means that the federal government is not going to be involved in the prosecution of small-time possessory drug cases, but we never were. So I'm not sure that I see a huge change yet. We've tried to adapt to a situation in Colorado with regard to how money is kept and transacted and all that stuff, and try to open up the banking system. But I think so far I'm cautiously optimistic. But as I indicated to both governors, we'll be monitoring the progress of those efforts, and if we conclude that they are not being done in an appropriate way, we reserve the right to file lawsuits, end quote. It's interesting that he chose the words file lawsuits instead of mount raids. Holder's assessment of marijuana legalization is in contrast to that of the Drug Enforcement Administration Director, Michelle Lionheart, who pointedly criticized President Barack Obama for comparing marijuana to alcohol. Lionheart claimed this month that voters were, quote, misled, end quote, when they voted to legalize at the state level, and that Mexican drug lords were setting up shop in Washington, Colorado, and the United States should have never gone forward with legalization. When Holder was asked about his own personal history with cannabis, he admitted that he used cannabis in college, calling it youthful experimentation. Holder said, quote, yeah, I certainly have said in my 4 or 5, whatever number of confirmation hearings I've had, that you fill out the forms that I had, quote, youthful experimentation, end quote. I think that was the phrase that we were told to use when I was in college. Holder also admitted that the Obama administration has made the political decision not to reschedule marijuana from its current federal Schedule 1 classification, which means no accepted medical uses and a high risk of abuse, and to a less restrictive classification, saying, quote, when it comes to rescheduling, that should come from Congress, end quote. The Attorney General, though, has the authority to reschedule drugs without input from Congress. Out of Annapolis, Maryland, Democratic Governor Martin O'Malley signed 2 separate pieces of legislation on Monday reforming Maryland's marijuana laws. Senate Bill 364 amends existing penalties for marijuana possession offenses involving 10 grams or less from a criminal misdemeanor, presently punishable by an arrest and up to 90 days in jail and a $500 fine and criminal record, to a non-arrestable, non-criminal, fine-only offense, $100 fine for first-time offenders, and a $250 fine for repeat offenders. The new depenalization law takes effect on October 1st this year. Maryland's House Bill 881 provides for state licensed production and dispensing of marijuana to qualified patients who possess a written certification from their physician. The new law will take effect on June 1st, at which time the state shall establish a commission to draft rules and regulations overseeing the production and distribution of medical marijuana. However, the licensing program is not anticipated to be up and running until 2015. Maryland is the 18th state to depenalize minor marijuana possession offenses to a non-arrestable offense. Colorado and Washington have also enacted regulations allowing for the legal retail production and sale of the plant. Maryland is the 21st state to allow for doctor-recommended access to cannabis therapy. In Colorado, the state of Colorado, and especially Denver, has seen a spike in travel interest and tourism since recreational marijuana sales to adults 21 and older have been legalized, according to data from Hotels.com. Denver's seen a 25% increase in hotel searches in the first 3 months of 2014 compared to 2013. Denver, ranked as the 17th most popular domestic destination for Americans in 2013, is the mile-high city and is also expected to see an influx of visitors this weekend, 4/20, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Hotel searches for the weekend of April 18th to 20th, when the city will host a number of organized events and music festivals, have increased by 73% compared to the same time frame last year. Tourists traveling to Colorado should remember a few basics. Cannabis is banned at the Denver airport. They passed a specific law there. They have installed amnesty boxes in terminals in Colorado Springs, and where you can get rid of your marijuana as you're leaving. But as I said, the Denver International Airport has taken a hard line banning cannabis possession anywhere on its premises. If you visit federal landmarks like the Rocky Mountain National Park or National Forest or national monuments, it's illegal to possess marijuana on federal land, even in Colorado. It's legal to transport marijuana in a vehicle in Colorado as long as it's not in an open container and you are within the Colorado borders, not federal property. However, using marijuana while driving is illegal, and the state's marijuana DUI law is strictly enforced. So that is the story there. Florida is the nation's largest swing state politically, and Democrats there see the medical marijuana amendment on this year's ballot as a source of hope and high voter turnout in November's elections. A constitutional amendment which would legalize medical marijuana in Florida is making it the first state in the South of the United States, has widespread public support, according to Michael Mishak of the Associated Press. The measure is particularly popular among young voters, a critical part of the Democratic coalition. Anna Cruz, the former executive director of the Florida Democratic Party, said, quote, "I wish it didn't take medical marijuana on the ballot to motivate our young voters to go and vote, because there's far too much at stake for them and their children. But listen, we'll take it any way we can get it," end quote. The Florida governor's mansion is up for grabs, as are a handful of competitive House seats. Florida could be a test case for whether increases in youth turnout in Washington and Colorado in 2012, when marijuana legalizations were on the ballot, was an anomaly or part of a trend. Activists plan to launch at least a half dozen legalization campaigns in battleground states in 2016. According to Colorado-based Republican pollster David Flattery, he says, quote, "It's a smart move for Democrats. It's going to help them, no doubt about it," end quote. Democratic consultant Steve Shale, who managed the Obama campaign in Florida in 2008, said, quote, "I would rather have it on the ballot than not. It could have a marginal impact, and a marginal impact in Florida could be a difference between winning and losing," end quote. According to George Washington University poll last month, almost 40% of likely voters nationwide said they'd be much more likely to vote if a marijuana legalization measure was on the ballot, with another 30% saying they'd be somewhat more likely to vote. Organizers of the medical marijuana campaign in Florida said they plan to raise and spend $10 million on the effort, much of which that money is going to get the vote out and register voters to cast absentee ballots. That's the end of our hemp news segment tonight. Okay, John, you ready to play some music?
Yes, sir. I got the perfect song for this too. You know, all that
All right.
that weed they collect over there at the airport. I think they need to send it to this man right here
Uh-huh.
because he needs some oil for his cancer.
Okay.
Excuse me.
What, I haven't given him enough?
No, you have, Paul.
Anyway, here we go.
Okay.
First
This-
thing to thank you, sir.
We like train wreck, Northern Lights. We like Shrek too, sour diesel. Life is good. Life is good. Life is good for you and me. So good. So good. So good. So good. We like God, but purple haze. We like Shrek too. Cinderella. Life is good. Life is good. Oh yeah. Life is good for you and me. So good. So good. So good. So good. It don't matter which you like. Don't matter when you do it. Just matters that you do it right and get down to it. So good. So good. So good. We like train wreck, Northern Lights. We like cheese too, sour diesel. Life is good. Life is good. Life is good for you and me. So good. So good. So good. So good. So good.
Thank you, John. That is John Cornett. Welcome, this is Pastor Ray Crystal. So you worked on the island of Maui and produced a television show there. I didn't even realize that. I mean, I've been your caregiver here in Oregon, and you definitely did a lot of petitioning for our initiative campaign in the 2012 cycle. You've been pretty ill this year, though.
Yeah, I want to thank you and your wife and in the control room, Bill and Red, for helping me with medicine, RSO, and a place to stay while I'm battling a cancer situation. I'm sorry I can't help you on 21 and 22. There's got to be some people out in the office that can help Paul with his.
We have a lot of people
tour.
helping, but
Yeah.
let's talk about your work on your television show.
Well,
in
I
Maui.
started the Maui Medical Cannabis Association. I didn't want to use the
When
word
was that?
marijuana because marijuana is a pejorative, what is called an ethno-Paulism. It's a word that's racially created, like the N-word, so that you feel all the feelings of bigotry and hatred in that word when you hear the word marijuana. And it's still there to scare people. Of course, it doesn't scare the three of us up here.
Obviously, it was anti-Hispanic racism that they brought that word out from. It was a Mexican slang term for cannabis. And if they had used the word cannabis or hemp, they wouldn't have been able to prohibit it because everybody knew what hemp was. Most people knew what cannabis was. Nobody knew that marijuana was cannabis and hemp when they prohibited it.
The way I found out, well, firstly, when I was a kid on the swimming team, we won the city's championship in 1970,
What city was
1969, Chicago.
Okay.
And they called me up and said, Ray, get over here on your bike. We got this Led Zeppelin 2. So I get over there and they go down, da-da-da-da-da, a whole lot of love. I go, wow, this music is so fantastic, guys. Thanks for inviting me. And I said, hey, we don't smoke cigarettes. We're swimmers. We're going to college on swimming scholarships. And they said, no, Ray, this is what these guys smoke in the band. You want to try some? I said, okay. So I didn't know how to smoke. They
So that
taught
was
me.
the first time you tried cannabis.
And here it is.
How old
God
were you
talked to me in my head. He said, Ray, there is love. There is a God. God is in every molecule in the universe, vibrating that love. And I turned to my friends and told them that. And they went, ha ha, Ray, are you stoned, dude? And I'm like, what's stone? What are you talking about? That's marijuana, don't you know? I said, I had no idea. I was just a naive kid of 17. And within a few months, I saw the Woodstock movie with a girlfriend of mine and the rest is history. I feel that cannabis is not only the most utilitarian plant in the world, it's the most medical plant in the world, it's the most spiritual plant in the world. It's at the formation of most all religion, including the anointing, and Christ means the anointed one. And they would glop on this cannabisum, which had cannabis in it in the Jewish faith. And so Moses would go in the Holy of Holies, which is canvas, which we know from the beginning of the show means cannabis in the Dutch through the Arabic and Greek. And so he would put it on the metal brazier, the oil, the anointing oil that had cannabis as the main active ingredient. And he would breathe in the fumes, and he would talk to God, and he would go out of the Holy of Holies and tell the people what God said to him. Now, how is that so much different than what I did at 17 years old?
So when you went to Maui, though, when did you had a cable television show
Well,
like this is a cable television
The years
show.
went on, and in 1992, I saw High Times magazine. There was a thing in the back for this guy, Jack Hare, and the greatest underground book that was ever written about marijuana, cannabis, hemp. I said, hemp, cannabis, what is it? I wrote away to it. I read the book in one day. I called up and got a hold of Chris Conrad. And I invited Chris Conrad and Jack to my farm next to Oprah Winfrey to do a medical. I invited every medical marijuana patient I knew to come to my farm because I had a Stages USA production company. Stage, sound, lights, that's what I was doing for a living at the time. And so I bought this farm next to Oprah Winfrey. There was one farm between us. And she called the DEA, and they surrounded me on the 200th anniversary of the building.
Oprah Winfrey called the DEA on
Yes.
you, or she called the police and the
She
DEA
called
showed
the
up?
DEA, and because I was trying to get a show with my patients, a medical marijuana show.
Okay.
She at that time was still hiding from using crack cocaine. The man made me do it, the crack cocaine. Now she's come out and said she's been a lifelong marijuana user. But at those days, she was worried about her money and her show. So I was surrounded by the police, and basically I lost my farm. Jack Hare was supposed to come. He couldn't get through the police barricades. This is the 200th anniversary, July 4th. What was it, 2000, no, 19, what year was that?
I don't know.
1992, 1992.
Okay.
So from there I went on a journey, and I went down a lot to the Rostas and Bob Marley and smoked with him and his young children, and they were the smartest young kids smoking. So don't ever hear this story that
So
kids.
that was in Jamaica.
Yes. So I went on a
So
spiritual sojourn. Finally, I ended up with Jim Kimmel and Roger Christie and the spiritual church out in Hawaii. And I started distributing medical
You went back
marijuana
to
out of
Maui.
our house, back in Maui. Now, this is in the 90s, 93, 94, 95, all the way to 97. 98, I was finally busted.
And so, but you produced a television show for Maui Cable Access.
I would
When did
bring
you
the
start
brothers
doing
on
that?
the show, like here.
When did you start doing it?
That was in 94, 95.
Okay.
And it went for about 4.5 years. And I would tell the people, if you need medical marijuana, get a hold of Pastor Ray, call me up. Here we have Brother Ben. He has epilepsy. He's a Hawaiian. All you know him, let him say. And then he would talk to the crowd. We made so much, because when I got to Maui in 93, it was still Reefer Madness 2.0, big time. And within a few years, we had turned it around to where they legalized medical marijuana, and they realized that medical was.
Okay, Ray, you know what? We have a phone caller. We take phone calls. If you have a question or comment for us tonight, you can give us a call at that number just popped up on your screen. It's 503-288-4442. And let's go ahead and take that caller. Welcome to the show, caller. Hello, caller.
Oh, Paul?
Yes.
Hi, this is Kim. How you doing?
Very well. How are you?
Great. Kate came back from that conference, the ASA conference, and that worked wonderful.
Good.
I mean,
That was in Washington?
And just a question for thought. How come you guys have to have that disclaimer at the beginning of your show?
Because we take phone calls and you never know what a caller's going to say.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's because of the unknown.
Yeah, it's not because of what we say, usually. It's what is said by the, we don't know what the caller's going to say, and so it could be bad. We try to screen out those bad callers, as the bad callers know, but sometimes they get through.
And
It
they
can
make
be
it a point to
difficult,
medicate me before the show, so I'm,
You never know what this guy's going to say.
yeah, calm.
All your hard work. There's a lot of people out there working hard, I found out when I went to Washington, D.C.
All right.
Take care, and I'll probably be down in the office. Talk to you soon.
All right. Well,
Have a
thanks
good
for
day.
your call.
Bye.
Again, if you have a question or comment for us tonight, give us a call at 503-288-4442. We have a couple posters here for the upcoming Global Marijuana March, and we're very happy to announce that our keynote speaker at the Global Marijuana March will be our United States Representative, Earl Blumenauer. He'll be taking that march with us. Earl Blumenauer has taken over as the top cannabis reform activist in the United States Congress. So we'll be down at Pioneer Courthouse Square. We'll be marching right at high noon. You want to get down there probably about 11:30. It's about a mile march escorted by the police through downtown Portland. This will be our 11th annual march, I believe. We'll be having a keynote speech from our own United States Representative Earl Blumenauer, and I believe this is the first time a U.S. congressman has been to and supported a global cannabis march. Now, these global cannabis marches happen all over the world in over 300 different cities around the world, and so we want to see you down there, Pioneer Courthouse Square, Saturday, May 3rd, 2014. Also, we currently have two initiatives in circulation. That is Initiative 21, a constitutional amendment that would end adult marijuana prohibition and allow the government to regulate cannabis for public safety, but they couldn't impose criminal penalties for cannabis under our constitutional amendment. It would end adult marijuana prohibition. Then our other initiative, Initiative 22, is a revision of last year's Measure 80, and it would allow people to cultivate their own cannabis. They could have 24 plants and 24 ounces without any license fee or registration. And it would allow the state to regulate it. So we urge you to get hold of these petitions and print them out and sign them. You can do that at hemp.org right now if you've got a printer hooked up to your computer. Otherwise, you can call our office at 503-235-4606. It's 503-235-4606, or come by our office at 2712 Northeast Sandy Boulevard to get involved in our initiative campaign. We have about 11 weeks to go right now, and we're gearing up to put this thing on the ballot. So please go out there and give us a hand. And so you've had a busy week here, Casper?
I have had a busy week, but before I talk about that, I was excited to hear about all the things that old Eric had to say up there on the hill. Mm-hmm. And first of all, you are only as old as you feel, right? And because of that, I can honestly say that I have spent 43 years engaging in youthful experimentation.
Okay.
Yes, I have. It takes some people longer to grow up. Someday I will. But until then, I'm experimenting.
Okay.
All right. Well, yeah, I've had a busy week. We've had great shows with the French team. We've moved their programming from the morning to the afternoon. Steve Bloom gave us a report today from the Cannabis Cup there in Colorado, and so did TL Weed in the morning report, giving us all the business updates on the marijuana movement and how the fields are growing. Get it? How the fields are growing?
Yes.
Yeah, it's nice.
You can get that.
And we got TJ, the DJ, who's rocking the house each day, and we've had new programming start. We had Cannabis in Canada, which is a pretty good show that people need to check out. And then we've got...
Especially if you're Canadian.
Yeah, well, no, it's a good global broadcast. They cover all kinds of global news. And then we've got The Farmer in the Sky. If you're looking for some tips for cultivating, we got an individual who knows how to put together a good ice garden indoor or out. That's on board, Wolf Siegel. I think you might know him. So we got a lot of programming going on, and I've been busting my fanny to make sure that it's all world-class and easy access, because it's the only pro-cannabis broadcasting network where? In iHeartRadio. So tell your friends to find us. Tune in, timeforhemp.com. Like all of my friends, we're growing.
All right. Well, that's good. If you have a question or comment for us tonight, you can call us at 503-288-4442. We also have a studio audience, so if you'd like to come down here and join us, you can at 2766 Northeast Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, most every Friday night at 8 p.m. And someone who's been involved in what we call the Cannabis Club Crawl for medical patients, where they're taking patients around to the various dispensaries to try those out, is here and ready to tell us about this week's progress. Go right ahead.
Well, this week we went out to Northwest Health Services, and they're out by 52nd and Duke. And what I love about these guys is they always have really good concentrates, which is really important for a lot of our patients on board, because they deal with pain or are surviving cancer patients. So that's always important. They also have a lot of really fun merchandise. So if you ever want to find a really cool t-shirt that has something like Dank of America, you can find it there. Then we went over to Pure Green, which is over at 37th and North Sandy Boulevard. They really want people to know about their 420 specials for this weekend. You can get 4 grams for $20. They have all sorts of different kinds that you can look at. You can also check that out on their website at puregreenpdx.com. And then we went over and checked out Oregon's Finest, which we all know as someone who is operating with their license now. And they're at 1327 Northwest Kearney. They really want people to know that they're very transparent in how they operate. And the first Thursday of every month, they have an open house for the public.
Excellent.
Yeah.
You guys are pretty busy, aren't you?
Yeah, we are really busy. Also, I just wanted to mention that any patients in the Portland area that are out at their local dispensaries, they can probably find our petitions there.
Nice.
Because I'm doing drops and pickups of all of those on a regular basis.
Well, excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So, thanks, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. You know, there is a video out there we've shown a couple clips on in the past about industrial hemp and its many uses, and we're going to show a little clip of that right now. It's called Bringing It All Back Home. So we'll be back just after this video clip.
We are importing the industrial hemp from the UK.
Wave it,
The issue with importing the industrial hemp is its cost. It's very expensive to ship it overseas. Until we are in a position in the US where we can effectively grow it here and cultivate it and process it, we're stuck with this solution.
This is a 50-acre crop of hemp to the west of London. The variety is called Ouzo. It's a French variety which is suitable for dual cropping. That's suitable for seed and fibre. So the seed will be going to the Good Oil Company and the fibre will be going to Hemp Technology. So if we cut through a stem, you can separate the fibres from the woody core, and that's why the factory is called a decortification plant, because it separates that woody core from the fibre that runs up the outside of the stem. And it's the fibre that goes into loft insulation, car door panels, and it's the woody core that is mixed with lime cement to make hempcrete for construction.
Sick building syndrome is caused by the materials in our houses. These materials are made of all kinds of chemicals, which we breathe and touch continually, making us sick, even though we may have no idea why.
When the humidity is constant, you breathe better. You don't have any illness. It is delighted as how you can build a house in a normal way using that material.
Once it's built into the building, it's fire resistant, it is a good thermal resistance, and it's good for the living environment.
A better insulation in these houses.
The hemp fibre insulation is made as a quilt and is very similar to glass fibre or mineral wool insulations in its look, but it's actually much nicer to work with because it doesn't have any hazardous components in it, so you don't need to wear gloves and goggles and mask, and you can use it in virtually all the places that you would use glass fibre or mineral wool insulation, so attics and walls. And it has very, very similar thermal insulation properties, but it has much better thermal mass to it.
Plastics is a major problem, and that's why the hemp plastic sides, the hemp biocomposites, one of the most exciting things that we can possibly be looking at the moment.
Processing hemp. Hemp is grown under contract for us by local farmers. We take the crop in and split it into its constituent parts. This is how hemp fibre is used in the automotive industry. This is a car door panel for a BMW 3 Series car. The use of natural fibres in these applications reduces the car's weight by a couple of kilos, and that all helps towards reducing fuel consumption. The automotive industry and animal bedding business markets are the largest part of our business. We expect the construction industry to grow rapidly over the next few years. In fact, within 4 or 5 years, we see that overtaking to be maybe 70 to 80% of our business.
People go and they buy some mass-produced t-shirt that has been dyed and has chemicals on it, and they put it on their body or on their baby, and it's going into you. Our skin is the largest organ on our body, and there are chemicals used in clothing to process fibers and fabric, and the dyeing is very toxic. And I've had clients specifically come to me because of that. They're allergic to dyes used in regular clothing, and they need something that's either a natural dye or not dyed at all.
Emporium is a South African hemp company that's been going since 1996. And it all started with something as simple as this, a little piece of cannabis canvas. And those words sound similar because they are similar. The word canvas comes from the same root as cannabis, and all canvas used to be made out of hemp. And that way it ties in with the history on using hemp in the sails, and obviously the ropes on all the boats as well. Even in South Africa, our Afrikaans word for shirt is hemp. We learned that this was a durable fabric. It made perfect sense to make bags out of it. We started making many more products and using our clothing especially as a message taker. An eco-audit was done in Canada where they grew conventional cotton and a hectare of conventional hemp and did the comparisons. And it was about 2,000 litres per T-shirt saving of water and about a cup of pesticides and agrochemicals. Hemp provides about 250% more fibre per hectare than cotton. So every shirt is making a difference.
This is hemp denim. It's hemp mixed with organic cotton. Then I'm making a skirt. This order from Hemp Traders, and
all right, well, that's an excerpt from the video about industrial hemp called Bringing It All Back Home. You can go out there and purchase that, look for the full video, and find out more about the developments in industrial hemp. So Ray, we were talking about your work in Maui.
Well, we had a church house, and Pastor Ray would take anybody who said that they would give up crystal meth or.
And you're Pastor Ray.
Yes.
Okay.
And I have a divinity. I have a divinity degree. which I used later as a professor in teaching in Cambodia, where I live now. The situation there was that I had a relationship with the vice commander. He knew I was selling
on the island of Maui.
And I won't give his name. He's long since retired. But he would talk with me, and I would give him the information about the cannabis. Now we're calling ourselves cannabis hemp activists. We're not saying we're marijuana activists anymore. And we're talking about industrial hemp, medical marijuana, social and spiritual cannabis to him. And he would go, and he was the president of the police group on all the islands. They would get together and strategize what they're going to do about all the activists. And in civil disobedience, you have to be above board. You have to take your punishment, and you also can't have any sedition. You can't have any secrets. You go right in there and tell the vice commander what you were doing. He let me continue to sell medical marijuana for 5-6 years. And Roger Christie on the Big Island watched me this whole time. And then on the Big Island, he was allowed for 10 years. And every police officer knows who you are when you're on TV. It was the fact in the Big Island when Roger stopped the green harvest and all the extra money that the police make from overtime, and also they're notorious for stealing marijuana from people, giving it to their friends to cure and sell. So when he interrupted that, they did a special, they called the Fed, and they did a special investigation on Roger. Now any person like Paul or Casper could spend one day and have Roger Christie at the Moses building in jail for selling marijuana. They spent 2 years and $20 million investigating a man that everybody in the whole islands knew what he was doing.
Now you're talking about Roger Christie,
yeah,
not
well,
on Maui, but on the Big Island.
He saw what I was doing, and then when I left and went to jail and left the islands, then he did exactly what I did on the Big Island. Talk to the vice commander, tell him what you're going to do, sell medical marijuana, get people off of crystal meth, get people off of heroin. And you know, what better than a pastor to talk, you know, cannabis brings us to our higher self. It brings us to our best in us when we smoke. It's not such a hedonistic thing, really. It's a spiritual thing. It's a wonderful thinking machine, cannabis, and it needs to be respected. And I might not get to the mountaintop with you, but we will get to the mountaintop, and our people will be free.
All right.
Thanks to Paul Stanford. Thank you, Paul.
And Martin Luther King Jr.
There
That's
have
from
been
his,
times when I
his final speeches.
hit the bong and went, oh God, yes. So yeah, I can see where it does make you.
You know, in Israel,
religious.
A guy at Hebrew University discovered THC about 30 years ago. His name is Raphael Mekulim, and 10 years later at Hebrew University, he and his team also discovered the endogenous cannabinoid that he named anandamide after the Sanskrit word for bliss, anand. And so we have a little video clip about Raphael Mekulim and his work. We'll be back in just a moment.
What a brilliant man.
Until quite recently, actually, until the mid-60s, the active constituent was not known. We identified a compound, tetrahydrocannabinol, THC, which is the only one that causes these changes. For many years, it was unknown whether these changes are just a non-specific action of THC. But in the mid-80s, it was found that there is a receptor in the brain that is acted upon by THC and starts a cascade of reactions which causes the changes that we identify as high. But how come that the brain has a receptor for a plant constituent? After all, our brain doesn't have a receptor for every plant constituent, actually doesn't have a receptor for any plant constituent. So we started working on the assumption that maybe there are compounds in the brain that act on this particular receptor, and THC in the plant actually mimics the action of the compounds in the brain. Indeed, about 10-15 years ago, we were able to isolate two compounds. One we called anandamide, and the other is known as 2-AG, that stimulate that bind to this particular receptor, and they start a cascade of reactions that we identify as high. Why do we have that system of receptor, endogenous cannabinoids? Why? I mean, just in order to cause high? No. This is a very important physiological system which is involved in a large number of physiological reactions and in large number of therapeutic reactions. For example, anandamide and 2-AG are involved in neuroprotection. When we have brain trauma, for example, the brain tries to reduce the damage by overproducing, if you wish, these compounds which lower the damage. They are also involved in anxiety. It is involved in sleep. It is involved in essentially all physiological reactions that have been investigated. Chances are that this particular system will be the basis on which a large number of drugs will be developed. At the moment, there is one major drug that has been introduced in Europe. A company produced an antagonist to the cannabinoid system, and they use it in order to reduce the appetite and also to enhance metabolism of fats so that ultimately we see an effect on obesity, an effect on all these diseases that are associated with obesity. Many other companies are working on many different aspects of cannabinoids, for example, inflammation, neurological diseases, maybe Alzheimer, and I assume that within the next 10 years we shall have a whole array of new drugs, as many companies are at present working on all these aspects.
All right, that's pretty informative. That's the man himself who discovered THC and his lab that discovered the endogenous cannabinoid system. So
it's an incredibly fascinating subject, cannabis and hemp, isn't it?
It certainly is.
It's just amazing.
I mean, we've taken a plant that produces more fuel from seed oil and biomass, more fiber from the stems and stalks, more protein from the seeds, more medicine from the entire plant than any other plant or crop. And it's the oldest agricultural crop. It's been cultivated at least 12,000 years and perhaps as much as 25 or 35,000 years. It's among the first crops purposely cultivated by humans. So we've taken, and all archaeologists agree with that. So we've taken the oldest crop, the most productive crop, and we've prohibited that one.
And because it has been prohibited, during the time it's been prohibited, we've had all these great advancements like the internet and science and going to space and all the things that we're doing. I have a hunch.
And breakthroughs in agriculture and productivity of plants.
When we can start looking at it more closely now with all of our other advancements, we're going to discover a whole lot more about this plant than we ever thought we would.
You know, we have another video also about the science behind cannabis, and we're going to run that one now. We'll be back in just a moment.
In the normal transmission of pain, ascending nociceptive signals travel up the spinal thalamic pathway to the thalamus, where they are processed and relayed to cortical and other areas. The ascending pathway also relays to the periaqueductal gray matter, an important part of the descending pain modulating system, where specific cannabinoid receptors are located. Stimulation of the periaqueductal gray is known to produce an analgesic effect. However, this neuroregulatory process is thought to be tonically restricted by inhibitory GABAergic off cells. Ascending pain signals relayed through the periaqueductal gray suppress the activity of GABAergic off cells through cannabinoid modulation, thereby increasing activity in the descending pain modulation pathway and increasing the analgesic effect. This is called depolarization-induced suppression of inhibition. A synaptic feedback mechanism is believed to be an inherent part of our normal neuroregulatory processes, including descending pain modulation. In many regions of the CNS, including the periaqueductal gray, the generation of postsynaptic action potentials is modified by an endogenous cannabinoid regulatory system. Endogenous cannabinoids are synthesized on demand from the phospholipid bilayer of the postsynaptic membrane. These lipophilic ligands are released directly into the synaptic cleft and act in retrograde fashion on the presynaptic neuron where the cannabinoid receptors are expressed. Binding of the endogenous cannabinoids affects intracellular signal transduction pathways, reducing the influx of calcium ions into the presynaptic neuron, causing a decrease in further neurotransmitter release. This in turn influences the frequency of postsynaptic firing. The administration of exogenous cannabinoids orally or through inhalation may therefore provide an option for treating pain that has responded poorly to conventional pain therapy. When exogenous cannabinoids are administered orally, they travel via the GI tract to the liver, where they are metabolized before entering the bloodstream and then the CNS. The onset of action from oral administration is less rapid compared to the inhaled route. When exogenous cannabinoids are inhaled, they travel through the respiratory tract to the alveoli of the lung, where they diffuse rapidly into the circulatory system. They then travel through the bloodstream towards the CNS, where they diffuse across the blood-brain barrier and into the surrounding tissues of the brain and spinal cord. Exogenous cannabinoids exert their modulatory effects upon the abundant cannabinoid receptors distributed throughout the CNS. The effects of cannabinoids may be illustrated by comparing three neuronal synapses showing normal pain transmission, the influence of endogenous cannabinoids, and the influence of exogenous cannabinoid administration. Exogenous cannabinoids from the bloodstream bind to cannabinoid receptors on the presynaptic neuron and mimic the endogenous synaptic modulatory effect by decreasing influx of calcium ions. In this way, pain and other neural processes are modulated. The clinical effects of exogenous cannabinoid administration are not limited to pain and have proven effects including the reduction of anxiety, spasticity, anorexia, and nausea. The development of novel drugs to modulate endogenous cannabinoid reuptake and metabolism may also prove beneficial in pain therapy. The therapeutic benefits of cannabinoids, including modification of the endogenous cannabinoid signaling system, should be further explored through clinical research.
Okay. So, from the University of Toronto, that announcer didn't exactly have a peppy style of delivery, did she? Think you were going to fall asleep there.
I felt like it.
I only had to slap him a few times to stay awake. But it's very definitely interesting how they illustrate that. They have a lot of great animations.
I'll turn the sound down next time and get high and watch it.
Okay. That might work. You never know. So we are taking your calls and questions tonight. We have about 5 minutes to go. You can call us at 503-288-4442. So Ray, you are fighting several medical problems with cannabis currently, and how's that helping?
Well, it has helped considerably. In fact, for a long time, it seemed to keep my blood sugar in check, believe it or not, the Rick Simpson oil. And, you know, Rick is the son of simple. He's not a scholar. He's not a doctor. He just reintroduced this idea of using solvents with cannabis, getting all the phytocannabinoids out and eating them or putting it topically on your skin cancer.
And he found that helped his cancer.
It
and
cured it.
He put out a series of videos that we've shown some
and
excerpts
he's a
of.
wonderful guy.
Run from the Cure were the name of
wonderful
the videos
guy.
he had put out.
In fact, when I talked to we were on Hawaii Public Television, and we were debating the vice commanders, the DEA, and the head of substance abuse, and he kept saying, "You guys keep saying that marijuana is so safe," and it's. Well, we said, no, that's Francis Young, the DEA judge, who says it's the safest therapeutically active substance known to man. It has no LD50. There's no lethal dose for 50% of a group. There is, and it is safe. It's non-toxic. So then I said, if you think it's so dangerous, tell me something that's safer than marijuana that you think, doctor. And he went, well, heroin. Heroin doesn't kill any. And the two vice cops shook their head. The debate was over, and then the politicians started getting ready to legalize medical marijuana after that debate. So it's going on my tombstone, that debate.
Okay. All right. You know, this Sunday, in addition to being Easter for many people, is also April 20th or 420, and a number of places will be celebrating that. I know our folks at the Cannabis Club Crawl mentioned a couple of them. I've got an email from one of our associates, Nikki, and she wants us to tell you about Nikki's Diggity Dank Gathering at the Alternative Wellness Center at 72nd block of Mitchell, 2 blocks off Foster. So there you go, Nikki. We have another phone call. Welcome to the show, caller.
Hi, Paul. How are you guys tonight?
We're doing pretty well. How are you?
Very good.
Wanted to announce a proposed ban of dispensaries in Clackamas County. That is to say, a hearing by the Board of County Commissioners. That'll be April 24th, 6 p.m., 2051 Kane Road, Kaen Road, Oregon City. Public's invited. Please show up. I plan on being there, and let's tell them how we feel about it. That's a proposed ban of dispensaries in Clackamas County, April 24th at 6 p.m., 2051 Kane Road, Oregon City. Thanks again for everything you're doing, you guys. Have a good night.
Thank you. Thanks for helping publicize that. You know, a lot of municipalities and counties have been moving to ban these dispensaries. Some of these folks have spent their life savings and borrowed from their family and friends to be able to try to open these businesses, and now the counties are stepping in there and banning them. You know, marijuana helps a large, wide spectrum of different conditions. So we have these dispensaries. If you or a loved one need help finding a doctor who can help you qualify for cannabis, we have doctors from Maine to Hawaii, especially here in Oregon and Washington. So give us a call at that number there on your screen, 503-281-5100. If you're outside the Portland area, you can call us toll free at 1-800-723-0188. We also have our petition drives. I'll put in another plug for those. We've got 11 weeks to go. Please help us with that. You can print those out online at hemp.org. You can call us at 503-235-4606 to get involved in that campaign, or come on down to our office at 2712 Northeast Sandy Boulevard and get involved and help in marijuana prohibition, which happens to stand for hemp, help in marijuana prohibition. And that's what our Constitutional Amendments Political Committee's name is. There's a name come up that Jack Harrer, a longtime, now dead cannabis activist, had initially formed under. Casper, you want to give a little plug for your huge and growing radio network?
It is, and I'm so surprised at another little thing that happened this past week. I put out a little newsletter that I thought would be just primarily for the host and the team players of the network, and there was enough people from the public who got copies of it from going to our internet that they wanted to subscribe to it. So we've decided that starting the 20th of next month and then thereafter the 20th of each month, we will be releasing a new Time for Hemp news zine that will focus on, of course, our programming, but as well as the events that are happening around the world and some of the new findings. So if you want to find out more about it, go to timeforhemp.com.
And we've just come out with a new edition of our Hemp News newspaper, so look for that. We've got petitions inserted in the Hemp News newspaper. We just printed 20,000 of those. Those will be hitting the streets next week. Thanks for coming on, Ray.
Thanks,
and I
Paul.
didn't even realize until you told me earlier this week that you had a cable television show there. And so I figured, you know, we are 3 cannabis cable access pioneers, and so it's good to have the 3 of us on here. And I want to thank you guys for watching. We're going to go out with another great song from Mr. John Cornett. Tune in next week and help us restore hemp. Good night.
Oh, that was fun.
Circles in the sand, never made by a human hand, laid down in a purple